host of the Radical Podcast, and he is running as a Libertarian for Senate in Georgia. So, Shane, I just want to kick things right off to you. Who are you, and why are you running for U.S. Senate, essentially, and why the voters trust you? Like, let's hear it all.
I guess first, I'm a glutton for punishment, and so I'm Shane Hazel. I'm running for U.S. Senate down here in the state of Georgia. Not a great state because we all know there's no such thing as a great state, but yeah, I kind of got talked into coming to the party by my good buddy Ryan Graham, who is the LNC, or I should say the Libertarian Party chair down here, and he's an awesome guy. I mean, you want to talk about a guy that's always out getting after it for trying to recruit not only people to come into the party but people to run. And so anyway, I attended the convention in January, and here we are. I beat out a couple guys in NOTA for this. I wasn't asking for it. It was more of a voluntold, and here's some more service for you to make up for the quote unquote the other service back in the past. And why am I running? I guess we're in a deficit for liberty in this country right now. I'm one of those guys that talks about fostering passion to grow genius so that we can lift humanity for all mankind. And when you don't have the liberty in place for a person, whether it's a child or an adult, to pursue their passion, we are also left with a deficit of genius out there. And obviously, when we see people like Bill Gates and the rest of these guys who contribute something amazing to society, it lifts all boats. And I want to see more freedom for my own children who are all kids. And I mean, we've got a Herculean fight ahead of us, and I think a lot of what I can't ignore about not only what I've where I've been and what I've done in my past is one of those things where I feel a compulsion basically to now kind of try to right the boat and bring attention to a whole lot of things out there that I had a very big misunderstanding kind of as a neocon when I was much younger.
Okay, so one of those things that you mentioned there is your service, and you are a Marine, and you have served in combat, so you are a Marine combat veteran. And looking at your website, and one of the first things that you say is, "It is a long past time to bring men and women in service home. Undeclared and unconstitutional, never-ending wars used to enslave Americans through debt and taxation. 20 years of war is enough death and destruction for a lifetime. It is time for peace." So I can, as someone who did not serve, can talk about ending war all I want, but you are in a unique position to talk about what things we can do for our military people when we end these wars, because one of the big questions I always get from people is, what is a soldier going to do when he comes home if there is no war? Because we've been at war for 20 years, and I think it's become that question is, people go because they're at war. So how do we transition to an at-home defense strategy through?
So first and foremost, obviously the best thing we can do for everybody, quote, in service to the country is stop sending them off to die in foreign lands to begin with. There's not a mission. And if you ask any of your politicians that are at the federal level, what's the mission in Afghanistan? What's the mission in Iraq? What was the mission in Syria? What was the mission in Libya? What is the mission in Yemen, for God's sakes? There is never an answer. It's just we are a force that's moved around the globe by an international banking cartel and the military-industrial complex, so to speak, to help those quote-unquote industries and those titans of industry make sure that they don't run out of money. So first and foremost, we need to stop sending them more. One of the best ways we can do that is obviously not rush off to war unless it's through a declaration of war, which can only be done by the Congress per Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. And that hasn't happened since World War II. Now, in terms of transitioning from a wartime military to a peacetime military, it's actually funny you ask. I was just on a different podcast last week, Veterans for Volunteerism, and what we were talking about was this very issue, is transitioning into, not even having standing armies and things like that, but to back up, because I don't want to miss this question.
Hmm.
The one of the best things we can do once guys are here, and after they've been overseas, they've seen combat, is make sure that they're not put in a liability column by the VA. And the VA, the Veterans Affairs Administration, is one of those places where you show up and you can be in peak physical condition. You can have your head right and everything else. And one of the first things they're going to do is they're going to ask you about PTSD, even if you never saw combat. They're going to take your blood if you didn't fast. I'll just give you a personal example. I wasn't told to fast. I went in. I had Chick-fil-A that morning for breakfast, and 15 minutes later, they're taking the gravy out of my blood, right? And so,
Yeah.
2 weeks later, I'd said, hey, listen, I don't have PTSD. I got meds in the mail for depression. I got meds in the mail for cholesterol. And, shortly after that, had I, kept going with that kind of stuff, I imagine I probably wouldn't have gone back and gotten more drugs for, things like constipation. And one of the things is that's, as a liability now to the United States, that's, when we look at really, really evil type of organizations like the state, they want you off the books. And one of the easiest way to get you off the books is to get you to commit suicide. So the depression meds and all the other meds that you have to take to try to even, feel somewhat normal, man, they shove those things down people's throats. And so if we could, get those guys into private healthcare systems, right, where if they wanted to go see a certain doctor,
I think Jo Jorgensen has proposed a plan. She's mentioned similar to in Indiana, where I guess instead of everyone having to go directly to the VA to get their services, they get their voucher or credit system essentially through the military to be able to go to any hospital of their choosing, or at least in network. And I think any hospital of their choosing or medical provider of their choosing would be more appropriate.
Well, and let's talk about some of the things that the community knows about, like the veterans know about, but not so much the public, right? And there's a lot of things going on in terms of research with psilocybin in Colorado. There's tons of things going on in places like Johns Hopkins for psilocybin, the effects of cannabis on veterans. And I'll tell you right now, as a guy who's been there and done it, and a great trip out to Colorado, I, got to experience a lot of that in terms of healing with cannabis. And I was reattached to my empathy. And as a vet that goes and is mission oriented all the time, like that's your job, is complete the damn mission, because mission failure is not acceptable. So anything that got in your way, even post military, a lot of times you're conditioned to think about something a certain way, and you aren't empathetic towards people who get in the way of that, whether it's your wife or your kids or your coworkers or whatever it is. And it's just these other types of treatments that are not mainstream. They are not your doc in a box. It's new. It's something that guys are trying, whether the government likes it or not. And a lot of these guys are having success. And so to open up here's your card, go wherever the hell you want, we'll pick up the bill, right? Like that's really about the least we could give these guys who we've destroyed a lot of their youth. We've destroyed a lot of their body and their heart and their mind, man. And so I'm all about making sure these guys get the care that they think they need, not just the prescribed care that the government's going to throw at them.
And that's so huge. I had Amanda Billings on, who's running for state senate in Kentucky this week near Fort Campbell, and suicide among veterans is one of the topics that we talked about, and getting them to be able to get alternative treatment instead of, as you said, they go to the VA and all of a sudden they have a box of pills that they take now. And I haven't personally had to deal with it, but I hear the stories, and I'm glad you're able to share that message. So thank you for that.
Oh, my pleasure.
So I've got a viewer question here, if we want to take that. So let's pop that up here. So what is the most important issue in Georgia, in your opinion?
Well, I think right now it's just liberty. We've got a governor who's suing the mayor of Atlanta over masks. We've got government messing with people's rights, and so I think the most important question and issue of any generation is, are your rights intact? Here in Georgia, I can tell you squarely that they're not. A lot of people will talk about, the number one thing in the economy is agriculture, and we've got a drug problem and all. No, hey, listen, we've got a freedom problem. We've got a liberty deficit here, where we had an executive, like most other executives, come out, and not only did they marginalize an entire class of citizen by calling them non-essential and
Hmm.
taking that non-essential label, did it more for destroying rights. And as a guy who teaches the Constitution, the Ninth Amendment is my favorite amendment. It is, hey, if we forgot anything in terms of the Bill of Rights, you still have all the rights reserved to you that aren't enumerated. You can't be disparaged with things like that. So,
Yep.
I
Yep.
always tell people, like, if it was a part of life before government existed, right? Did people barter? Did they trade? Did they work? Did they defend themselves? Did they defend their property? Did they expect to be, private and things like that? And so, when you look at being called non-essential and saying your businesses can't operate in a certain way, well, you're destroying the right of association. You're destroying the right to work, the right to trade, the right of conscience. I mean,
Mhm.
all these rights have been destroyed. We're still a will licensed state, so there are, God knows, 22,000 firearms laws here that are unconstitutional.
Yeah.
We've got a huge deficit in terms of privacy, your right to be secure in your personal property effects.
Hmm.
I mean, it just the list goes on and on and on. And we've even got a guy who's the Speaker of the House down here. His name is David Ralston, who exercised some privilege in terms of how a law was crafted that he helped pass to make sure that one of the people that he was defending as a pedophile, an alleged pedophile, never went to court, and the young girl that was, allegedly raped and sodomized and abused by this god awful person, he finally got off of going to trial because it was extended too long, and at some point, they were just like, well, let's let it go. So down here, I think it's probably like everywhere else. For me, it's a rights issue for everybody. If we've got liberty, if we've got liberty, we've got peace, we've got stability, the economy recovers, and people are much better off.
Yes. So that's a great answer to the question there for focusing in Georgia. Now, when you're going to represent Georgia, I think the second thing that you mentioned on your website is end the Fed.
Yeah.
Uh, your website's out of date because you say 23 trillion. You're at like
I'm so far
27
behind.
trillion, and you've had the website up for just a little bit. So you might need an API or something there to just keep that updated, because you're never going to be able to keep up with it.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm gonna have to learn how to code a little better. Now we're gonna get taken off the internet because I just said learn to code. Jeez, oh Pete, yeah, ending the Fed. For any good libertarians out there, or, if there are recovering Democrats or Republicans who are listening to us, the Federal Reserve. If you do anything else, learn about the Federal Reserve. The great book of the Creature from Jekyll Island that's out there that starts to help you understand what a monster that is. One of the great things that Jackson did was kill the banks, and he's not, the best president ever by any stretch of the imagination. But in terms of killing the banks, we need to decentralize. Sound currency and currency of choice, right? Like, the market is good at picking winners and losers. It's also great at picking what people will trade. If it's sugar or salt or, seashells, whatever the hell ever it is, right? It's like, we got to get this, power of counterfeiting money out of thin air, out of the hands of an international elite banking cabal that's faceless, nameless, has zero of your interest at heart, and give that back to the people. And I don't care if it's blockchain, I don't care if it's Bitcoin, I don't care if it's any of those things as long as there isn't government control over it. And obviously, I'm a big fan of agorism and everything else out there because obviously savings are what produce wealth. When we talk about economics and the ideas of macro and micro aren't so much that relevant compared to Keynesian
Hmm.
and Austrian, which is where where we as libertarians really tend to shine is when we talk about things how we've been a Keynesian country since the late 1940s, and here we are in this pile of debt that we're going to have to default on one way or the other.
At some point. At some
Yeah.
point. Yeah, we don't really have a choice. I was reading somewhere, I think the deficit for July was greater than the deficit for all of 2018
Well, yeah, and I mean, and I know
with our current spending here.
you're not quite as old as I am, but I remember when we were under, I think, $5 trillion in debt, and I also remember kind of like Barack Obama. I think it was Barack when he surpassed the $10 trillion mark,
Hmm.
and to think about that. In all of U.S. history, we never passed $10 trillion in debt, and now this year, mark my words, by the end of 2020, if something massive doesn't happen, we're going to spend $10 trillion at the federal level this year, and you're just like,
So
this
so
can't continue.
yeah. So for people who are new to this concept, can you elaborate on why national debt is bad? What is because we have to pay interest on
Sure.
this. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily paying the whole thing back, but it's using a credit card, and when you use a credit card, the interest is what is the big problem.
Yeah, you can't even service the debt. Is what that's what you'll hear people who talk econ talk about. Is once the debt gets so big that you can't service the debt, even with the taxes they're taking in. And we should probably back up another step, right? Is if you haven't studied this kind of thing, let's understand that every dollar that's created out of thin air, counterfeit money, that dollar, when it goes into circulation, can be split 9 times. Fractional reserve banking is what it's called.
Mhm.
And when that comes back, right, that $1 is paid back 9 different times with interest. But when the final dollar is repaid that you owe to the Federal Reserve, you still owe them more, which is impossible. So what it does is it creates a slave population because taxation equals, or I should say, debt equals taxation equals enslavement, right? It's a real simple formula. The kicker in all of this, and I hope a lot of people hear this maybe for the first time, is if a Federal Reserve can create counterfeit money out of thin air, why the hell are you paying taxes?
Mhm.
It is
It's the same
complete
thing. It's
and
just double
total
dipping.
control. That's all it is.
Yep. Yep. So, other things that I think we've talked about: war, tax policies, permitting is another thing that you mentioned that restrains people.
Mhm.
Restrictive licensing. I think everyone's kind of talked about that, and I think we're pretty comfortable there. Most people are. One of the things that a lot of people who want to get involved in the Libertarian Party ask me all the time is, how do I get involved? So you, as running for Senate, what are some of the things that you need? Because you are running against a machine that
Yeah.
is oiled with millions and millions of dollars. And you're probably not getting that because no one in the state of Georgia individually is contributing millions and millions of dollars. It's all coming from outside political action committees.
Right.
You need to compete in an environment where you're running for Senate against a well-oiled Republican machine.
Yeah. So, I understand the way the machine works and how the environment that is the industries around the machine works. Um, you know, that was brought to me, the first time I ran for Congress, and that was as a Republican.
Hmm.
Obviously a Liberty Republican still, but at any rate, um, you cannot fight the machine head on. One of the things, obviously, that I'm fairly skilled in is understanding asymmetrical warfare and counterinsurgency and guerrilla tactics and all that fun stuff. So what you have to do is you have to hit them where they're not, and you have to be able to be in a lot of different places. You have to be able to speak, and that's the one thing that we as libertarians have that they don't. If they get in front of cameras, they're going to they're going to misstep at some point, especially if we're in the race. And then you have cognitive dissonance, and you can point this out and point it out and point it out, and slowly chip away. Not only are you up against a money machine, which I'm not actively trying to fight head on. I think it's a never-ending, non-winning formula. And so what you have to do is you have to think differently. You have to start thinking out of the box. How do you get more attention? How do you get more return on your investment? And it's I don't know if a lot of your viewers follow the Christian path or any other path, right? But like most religions out there, they teach to love thy neighbor. And when we start to say, let's forget about the way that the less evil party does things. Let's start looking at the way things should be done. And in this time and age, it was made very plain to me is I'm not actively raising money. In fact, I'm telling people, go out there and support the people who are hurting in your neighborhoods, in your communities. Find a charity if you don't know anybody that's hurting and help them. Hire somebody if you're an entrepreneur. Whatever you can do to help your community in this time, don't give your money to me because what am I going to do with it? I'm going to go out there and run political campaigns. We're going to do pretty good down here because of name recognition. But at the same time, if I can start to inspire people to do things that way, I don't want you if I don't want your money now, I definitely don't want your money through taxes when I'm in office. And you have to think differently in those terms to try to fight. The other thing you have to do is you got to be all over social media, and you have to have your people who are your diehard, your fans. You got to take care of them. You got to love on those people because those are the guys that are going to take unpopular stands with a libertarian, and they're going to get beat up. They're going to get beat up by their friends. They're going to get beat up by their family. Hell, they may even lose family and friends because they are standing with somebody that makes everybody else super, super uncomfortable. And, they're going to get the same thing that we get every year. It's like, if you vote for that guy, you're making sure that the other lesser evil wins or, whatever it is, right?
Yep.
It's crazy.
That's kind of how this whole page started. This for me, it was 2015, and I wanted to spam Facebook with, Gary Johnson memes starting in 2015. And I said, well, how about I just put it on a page and let more people do that too? So that's kind of how it started. And I think this year's Jorgensen campaign, the social media campaign, the grassroots level of going out there and putting the message in as many, exclusioned conversations where Joe's been excluded has been good. I had a conversation with Brad Barron. You talked about where the value is. He got donated from Mitch McConnell's Republican opponent the maximum legal amount of fence posts for putting up the big 4x8 signs. Yeah. And I guess they said somewhere the math on those each one of those can convert about 100 votes. So, looking at where the value is always good, I think, for everyone. Mm-hmm. With that as well, do you have any advice for getting involved in the local parties for anyone setting up their affiliates? I'm not sure how involved you are in your state level.
Yeah. So I was a delegate this year for the Libertarian Party of the state of Georgia, and it was my first time. Let me tell you, it is a great crowd. Especially at your state level, it should be not quite as contentious as at the national level, but go down and see the process. I mean, this is an easy party to get involved in. If you want to get involved, which I'll maintain. Liberty demands that you participate. So, if you get involved with your local party, you can do things like, have people go out and clean up parks, go out and do, charity, because we have to be those people that practice what we preach, because we don't want the state intervention. And so we've got to be the solution, like as Maj says, we got to be the solutionaries out there, coming up with local fixes to local problems at the state level. However you can help out candidates. If you got a name, you got a podcast, you got any way to help these people, get them out there. If you're just a person, recruit other people to share whatever they're doing. If they're creating videos, if they've got, memes, whatever those people do, recruit people to help you share those across all platforms and say that, like an old fuddy like myself, right, who's not on TikTok.
Mhm.
Hey, go out and help me on TikTok if that's your thing, man. Like if don't wait to be told to do something. Take action.
Yep.
That is a huge thing with being successful. Is don't wait to be told to do something. If you got a passion for something in Liberty, I don't care if you're a videographer, if you're good with audio, if you're great with memes, if you're good with websites. Somewhere along the line, you got to be at least able to click the share button and put that thing out there. If you got the other skills, donate those. Pick somebody. I don't care if they're in your state or if they're in some other state. And really, I'll tell you right now, there's this may piss some people off, but the Mises Caucus, I love those guys because what they do is they have a fund and they are generating more and more money over time, and they're looking at the local libertarian races. If you're running for Senate and you've got some commissioners or something like that you can help bring along, those can be decided by a couple thousand votes, and you might be that person, whether you're Joe Jorgensen or Spike or whoever out there, to help those people. And so there's just, your imagination is the limit of how you can get involved. It's how you can help. And like I said, once you get involved, don't be that person that worries. And I don't think libertarians have that problem as much as Democrats and Republicans. We don't really give a shit. And sorry if this is a no cussing show. We don't care, what most people think of us. And I think that's a huge thing to our advantage.
Yep. I think anyone who has ever had a conversation with a libertarian knows every libertarian is well versed in their opinion on where the line of liberty is.
Right. Even Nick Sarwark.
I saw a tweet the other day, and it said, well, I guess I'm only 75% libertarian, because she said something about the person said they disagreed on something. I said, that would make you the most libertarian of all libertarians that ever existed, based on any libertarian that currently exists. So
that's great.
It's a big tent, and we're all on the same side. We're all I would say that everyone I talk to, I get messages probably, I don't know how many 100 a month, 1,000 a month on this page itself. And I know anyone running pages for campaigns get tons of questions, but just get out there, get involved. And not all of us are going to agree on every single point all the way, because some of us have been looking at this for longer or thinking about it longer in different ways and have evolved our different opinions.
Right, and we come from different backgrounds. I think that's one of the greatest thing about libertarians is you got Democrats, you got Republicans, you got ANCAPs and MNCAPs and every flavor, and we agree to disagree. That's the best part. And we're like, cool, you're gay, I'm straight, you're black, I'm white, whatever. Who gives a damn? If you don't like it, don't do it, and don't make somebody else do it. And that's how you've got a proven model of how people can coexist in peace.
Yep. So I think that's kind of about 30 minutes there is where these usually go. And I just want to say thank you, Shane, for coming on. And any other candidates that want to come on, feel free to reach out to the page. Those of you guys still watching at the 30-minute mark, make sure you like, share, subscribe, comment. This is going to be on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So thank you, Shane, for joining me. And look forward to more conversations with more candidates. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Ron.